Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Lord of All, I Have a Troop Editor. Chapter 81. The legendary military formation composed of archangels swept through the sky with the Holy War Song. Before it was halfway through, it had already gathered the power of the Holy Light to form three giant white cross holy swords. They slashed down from three directions, and in the blink of an eye they have already reached the Legion formation below the city. However, an army has been waiting here for a long time. The power of the Crimson military formation enveloped the entire place, and the crimson sun rose into the air, directly colliding with three holy light cross swords. After three brief roars, the blazing sun burned away the lightsaber, which was still hanging in the sky, bringing light to the dark world obscured by dark clouds. Long Night Guard's military formation Yi Xingluo. John Hal stood at the front of the military formation, raised his sword high, and launched an unyielding counterattack against the incoming angel military formation. Four types of starry nights, fierce sun and fire. The red sun burst out with scorching divine fire, spraying a pillar of fire into the sky, sweeping across the angel army formation. Facing the flames that were burning mountains and boiling seas, the angel formation had to stop and burst out the holy light energy with all its strength, creating layers of walls of wings around it to resist the burning of the flames. They stopped, but Wu Wei's army was unwilling to stop. The power of the military formation was mobilized again, and a giant flame dragon emerged from the blazing sun and crashed towards the angel military formation. Type 2 Yanye Xingluo Kagaya Flame Dragon. Even though it still couldn't break its solid defense, the flame dragon carried the angel formation and flew back thousands of meters, and then hit the ground directly from the air against their holy light shelter. Coincidentally, below is a large military formation composed of the White Lion Knights and their White Lion Guards who have been running all the way. Yanlong led the Angel Army formation and directly hit the defense layer of the White Lion Army formation, making a loud noise, and then shattered into massive flames and spreading shock waves. Even if they failed to break the defense of the White Lion Army formation, they still consumed the energy area of the army formation every day. This powerful attack without mercy once again shocked the two enemy armies, and at the same time they became more and more fearful. Not only does it have strategic means that can continuously use forbidden spells, but it also has a powerful military formation that has never been seen before. How can this be the army of the Cornflower Kingdom? Are there any unknown forces entering the game? The strength and methods shown by the Cornflower Kingdom's counter-rebellion army made the people behind the two rebel armies speculate a lot, and then they also began to think about the unknown third party. But no matter how they thought about it, they couldn't imagine which force's method this was. The occupation of the scene did not allow them to think too much, because when they were blocked, the enemy formation under the city had once again raised a giant magic array into the sky that impressed them. The opponent's second forbidden spell is about to take shape. There is no time to delay any longer. If the forbidden curse is ravaged again, not only will the two rebels who are important chess pieces be directly disabled, but even the energy of their current military formation will be consumed to the point of drying up. At that time, the opponent's military formation, which is still intact and full of energy, will chase them and kill them. Coupled with the hundreds of thousands of troops from the royal army that have not yet been dispatched, they might even be annihilated here. Whether it is 100 Archangels or the White Lion Legion, they are the trump cards of their respective forces, and no one can afford to lose them. If the plan fails and you use your trump card, it will be a loss to your grandma's family. This kind of thing will never be allowed to happen. The two military formations once again mobilized their full strength, and simultaneously launched the most powerful attack, attacking the Night Watch Legion. The White Lions roared while charging, and the extremely huge White Lions overhead roared and flew across the battlefield. The angelic legions flew into the sky, condensing all their strength to form a cross of holy light that penetrated the sky and the earth, and suppressed the legions under Baifeng City like the top of a mountain. It seemed that they were attacking together, but what even the leader of the White Lion army didn't notice was that the Angel Army formation, which was originally the fastest and best at raiding, did not move forward fearlessly like them. Instead, they turned back immediately after releasing the attack. Fly away from the battlefield as quickly as possible. By the time the White Lion Legion reacted, a shocking dragon roar could be heard in Baifeng City. A long bloody dragon that was bigger than the White Lion of the military formation soared into the sky, and directly collided with the Holy Light Cross with a world-beating momentum, abruptly shattering the angel military formation that could compete with the powerful demigods. Power. At the same time, giant flaming meteorites were separated from the blazing sun condensed by the military formation below the city, and collided with the white lions condensed by their military formation, blocking their progress. Cut down. The leader of the White Lion Army's eyes were splitting after seeing this, and he couldn't help but exclaimed. 0. Demigod strongman. Not good. Then he turned around and saw the angelic army formation escaping quickly on the horizon. He immediately reacted and was so angry that he almost bit his white teeth into pieces. These guys from the Holy See have long known that the other side has demigods in charge. We've been tricked. Unfortunately, even knowing it now won't help. The scorching sun above the Yanye Shingluo army formation changed again, giving birth to an even larger flame dragon, looking at the pale energy giant with eager eyes. In the form of a dragon, Hegnev stood above the bloody dragon, looking at the white lions who had become a turtle in a jar, and showed a cruel smile. How can the White Lion Legion alone break through the protection of the demigods and exclusive military formations and prevent the operation of the forbidden curse? Soon, the second forbidden spell was completed again and released on the battlefield. The two groups of rebels who were abandoned on the battlefield by their supporters behind the scenes didn't even have time to run far before several thunderstorms came again. Prince Bor and Duke Hongye, surrounded by their personal guards, stared blankly at the sweeping doomsday scene, closing their eyes in despair. On the top of Baifeng City, Wu Wei looked at the battlefield with a smile, as if a reminder sounded in his ears. Ding! A glorious victory! The war ended as Wu Wei expected. Under the continuous siege of Hegnev and the Night Watch Legion, the White Lion Army's military formation was broken. At the last moment, the opponent was already seeking death. In the end, it consisted of 50,000 third-level White Lion Guards, 30,000 fourth-level White Lion Leather Light Cavalry, 10,000 fifth-level White Lion Heavy Armor Warriors, 9,000 sixth-level White Lion Heavy Cavalry, and 1,000 seventh-level White Lion Heavy Cavalry. The 100,000 White Lion Legion composed of White Lion Knights was completely wiped out on the Tradewind Grassland, and no one survived. This ace army that shocked the Kingdom Alliance countries was destroyed in a foreign country because of greed and unjust invasion. The two groups of rebels were hit by the forbidden curse twice in a row, and their morale collapsed. They collapsed and were unable to organize themselves. Wu Wei sent a large army to chase after them and quickly completed the finishing touches, capturing all the surviving Prince Bor and Duke Chowser. Although they were run away by the Archangel Army of the Holy See, as an external force, without the traitor as a chess piece to cover, they could not have much impact on the situation. In other words, once this battle is over, there will no longer be any force in the Cornflower Kingdom that can disobey Wu Wei's orders. When the news of the counter-rebellion army's victory over the two rebel armies spreads throughout the country, the nobles in each city will naturally surrender to Queen Isariel. Even if you are still stubborn and unwilling to surrender, it is meaningless. When Wu Wei's army arrived, it was just another raid on the house. After the war, the counter-rebellion army stayed in Baifeng City for another 3 days. Mainly to deal with tens of thousands of rebel prisoners, clean the battlefield, and collect loot. Now that the overall situation has been decided, Wu Wei no longer needs to be as anxious as before. Before going to expel the last threat to the kingdom, the Orc army on the southern border, he needs to sort out his gains. In addition to the 600,000 troops and confiscated treasures he had accumulated in his hands, he now had a total of 60 million spiritual crystals in his hands. And during this period of time, because he had no time to practice, he had already accumulated hundreds of millions of personal experience points. If he digests them all, his strength will probably reach an extremely high level. After all, he does not lack extraordinary cores, but only lacks the time to practice. The Lord experience has also reached more than 5 million. Since he has not changed his profession, he has not upgraded. Looking back now, war is indeed the fastest way to become stronger. In a month or so, he had accumulated such a large fortune and gained control of a local human kingdom. If he hadn't come out at the beginning, he might still be opening up the wilderness and getting along with wild monsters. With so much supplies, the base camp in the Aran Mountains can develop with peace of mind. Thinking of this, Wu Wei is full of ambition and satisfaction, and can't wait to start the next journey. Go ahead and tell the troops to seize the time to organize themselves. Her Majesty the Queen is still waiting for our troops to return to the court. 3 days later, the counter-rebellion army, which had taken care of everything, returned to the royal capital smoothly. The first thing I did when I returned to the royal capital was to pull out the 2 traitor leaders and their direct subordinates, publicly try and convict them, and then send them to the guillotine. Show it to the people in the city, and also show it to the nobles all over the country, so that they know who is the real winner. This move was effective. Seeing that the rebellion was over and the situation was settled, nobles from all over the country expressed their submission one after another for fear that Wu Wei would settle the score later. Regarding the few nobles and city-states who did not express their opinions, Wu Wei did not waste any words and assigned 200,000 troops to Geralt, the leader of the Holy Dragon Knights, and asked him to lead the troops to surrender by force. The integrity and unity of the king must be guaranteed. In fact, this is also to transfer him and keep him away from Isariel, so as to prevent him from conveying any inappropriate thoughts to the simple and naive Her Majesty the Queen. Then came the second thing after returning to the royal capital. Wu Wei soon issued a nationwide transfer order, requiring all localities to send troops, food and money, all of which were sent to the royal capital to support the subsequent patriotic war with the Border Orc Legion. This is a mandatory order, not a request. If any city is unwilling to give it, it will be directly labeled as a remnant of the rebels, and the only end result will be death. In this case, they don't have to give it even if they don't want to. Wu Wei now has all the power in the government, covering the sky with one hand, and truly speaking, they will naturally pay the money to buy their lives. However, although he was domineering, he did not want to force them to death. The amount he set for them was neither high nor low, so that it would make them feel distressed but not break their bones. In terms of soldiers and horses, Wu Wei only wanted God-given soldiers, and he only wanted light cavalry, swordsmen, mages and knights. He did not want low-level units. The swordsman is in greatest demand, because he wants to expand the size of the Night Watch Legion, and direct conversion is the fastest way. Each city will draw hundreds or even thousands of swordsmen in, and the whole country will be able to gather tens of thousands of swordsmen in one round. When they are brought back to the southern border, they will be converted into long night guards at the same level. By then, John Hal's under his leadership, the power of the Night Watch's military formation will reach the level of demigod. With such expectations, Wu Wei waited patiently in the capital. At the same time, he also took the time to consume experience points and try his best to strengthen his strength. This is not only for the next action, but also because another Blue Star time travel is coming soon. In the past month, every time he returned to Blue Star, he tried to keep a low profile and quietly collected resources, but this time, he was planning to do something big. That night, in the Sapphire Palace, there was a side hall reserved for the Cornflower Regent. Wu Wei woke up from practicing. As soon as he opened his eyes, a light flashed in the dark room. Finally, all the experience points have been consumed. Having 3 extraordinary cores at the same time is really powerful. Even if most people want to use up so much personal experience, it would probably take several months, but I only need a few days. Wu Wei murmured to himself and looked happy at the same time. Not only did I not worry about the huge consumption, but I was overjoyed. For him, high consumption is not a problem, it means that his strength is improving at a much faster rate than usual. It's amazing to know that other people can have a kind of extraordinary core. If they consume experience points for a long time to speed up their cultivation, the cultivation effect will become worse and worse, but Wu Wei has no such concerns. With 3 extraordinary cores at the same time, he can take turns to speed up his training and maximize his efficiency. Moreover, each of his extraordinary cores is extraordinary, much more efficient than the lousy extraordinary 24 powers such as Do Qi, and his usual training effect is also better than that of ordinary extraordinary cores, and naturally consumes more experience points year on year. This is also the reason why Wu Wei's experience consumption is so exaggerated. But if you invest big, the rewards will be natural. Wu Wei's current strength is no longer what it used to be. All 3 types of extraordinary cores have reached the level of extraordinary, pushing his attributes to a terrifying level, far beyond what an ordinary 7th level knight can match, at least for standard 7th level attributes, more than 5 times. He also used 5 million Lord experience to improve his Lord level. Now, His panel is as follows. Name: Wu Wei. Personal attribute column. Talent ability. Imaginary number real X level talent. Personal occupation. Dragon Blood Warrior, Furnace Knight. Personal level. Level 7, Level 1 LV71. 4-dimensional properties. Physical fitness 398.6. Agile, 381.2. Master a skill. Holy Atonement body transforms oneself into the form of a sinful angel, legendary level 9. Maintaining this state requires consuming 2000 points of holy power every minute, and the cooling time is 24 hours. Dragon Blood transformation not activated. Dragon Blood Warfare LV7, Yanye Swordsmanship LV7, Fate Star Fire LV7, Holy Brilliance Magic LV5, Riding Skill LV10. Extraordinary Core. Redemption Holy Glory, Life Furnace, Dragon War Bloodline. Extraordinary Power. 180,000 180,000ths. Dragon Blood Fighting Spirit 160,000 160,000ths. The Power of Life Fire 160,000 160,000ths. Current status. Good. Combat Strength Evaluation. A seemingly low-level monster of the extraordinary level, a super freak who can beat the 9th level troops. If you don't have the strength of the Holy Realm, it's best not to try to challenge him in a one-on-one fight. Lord Attribute column. Lord Occupation. None. Unlocked job transfer clues. Pioneer Knight, Thief Lord. Lord Level. LV60. Lord Attributes. Speed. 15. Ix. 15. 50. 10. 15. 10. Mana. 525 120ths. Control value. 261,000, not counting equipment bonus. Lord Skills. Underworld Spiritualism LV10, full level. Frenzy of the Dead LV10, full level. War Spells. Military Formation Saving Power, exclusive. Military Formation Bloody Dragon Slaying, exclusive. Military Formation Yi Xingluo, exclusive. Military Formation Death Sea Rider combination. Death Ripple, legendary. Lord Skill Points, 0. Lord Attribute Points, 0. Territory controlled. Glimmer Territory, City of Dark Night, Southern Territory of Cornflower Kingdom. As the evaluation in the personal panel said, Wu Wei's current single strength has reached a level that can be called a monster, and ordinary legendary troops may not necessarily be his opponent. Of course, in terms of attributes and actual combat skills, even a 7th level knight is better than him. In the final analysis, his strength is all accumulated through experience points. He is usually so well protected that he almost never actually fights and has 0 actual combat experience. If he really had to fight against the legendary troops, he probably wouldn't be able to hold on for long before he would be killed. However, with his powerful basic attributes and 3 high-level extraordinary powers, he could still compete with the 9th level troops. This kind of strength is enough for Blue Star. Ordinary firearms can no longer break through his physical defense. Even a large-caliber artillery can be defended by using extraordinary power. In Blue Star, he is the real Superman, and absolutely no one can reach his level at this stage. This is his early advantage, so he must make good use of it and take the opportunity to collect and transport as many useful things in the real world as possible to the Iron Continent. For this reason, he has been researching during this time to see if there is anything else worth bringing back from Blue Star. So far, his research has yielded some results. You don't know if you don't do research. Once you do research, you will be shocked. There are quite a lot of treasures that can be mined in the Blue Star Plain. Wu Wei was so excited that he even made a list. This time when he returned to Blue Star, he was ready to take action. Night gradually fell. Wu Wei calculated the time and slowly closed his eyes. Not long after, Wu Wei felt dizzy and fainted before he could hold on for long. When he woke up again, he had returned to Blue Star. Wu Wei suddenly opened his eyes, his heart moved, and he had already converted a list from the conscious space. Looking at the item catalog above, Shi Wei opened the fish. Let's begin my journey of harvest. On the empty road, a cool black heavy motorcycle roared past with a low roar. It braked suddenly and swung its rear wheels, stopping in front of a gas station on the roadside. A well-dressed young man got off the motorcycle, casually took off his helmet and hung it on the handlebar, then took off the 2 gasoline cans hanging on the back of the motorcycle and walked into the gas station. The place was unusually deserted at this time, with no customers at all. There was only a beautiful girl with yellow hair looking at the computer at the counter. Seeing the young man entering the door, the girl asked carelessly, "Hey, are there still speedsters out there at this time? If you don't study the knowledge of other worlds at home, you still go out to race cars. You are very generous, brother." Judging from her demeanor and tone, Baobabchi was also a wild girl before the mutation happened. The young man didn't care about her tone, he just raised 2 gasoline barrels and explained casually, "It's not a drag race, I just want to go out of town, and the transportation is not convenient now. I thought of my previous dream of being a knight, so I simply borrowed one, traveled lightly, and experienced the feeling of speed." The girl saw that the young man looked strong and handsome, and his words were quite interesting, so she became interested and teased, "Then how do you feel now?" The young man replied, "It's okay, it just wastes gas and is not as convenient as riding a horse." The girl laughed and immediately understood what he meant. Now the whole country has entered a state of on-site learning, and all major systems have stopped functioning. Money has no effect. Food is distributed regularly by the state. Not many people go out. Gas stations only refuel vehicles delivering supplies for free. It is really difficult to do it privately. It's time for gas. If you don't want to beg in a low voice, then you can only rob. By the way, doing this would be considered disturbing the peace and might alert the SWAT team. If you rob other small shops that no one cares about, you will rob them. Now no one cares about these extraneous things, but the same cannot be said for gas stations. The country is still using them. As for the horse riding he was talking about, he naturally meant Zai Xiuan. Seeing the girl's knowing smile, the young man also laughed shamelessly. "Pretty lady, how are you? Can you help me add some fuel?" The girl showed a bright smile and answered without hesitation, "No, I don't have much gas left. There will be a transport truck coming later." The young man was speechless for a moment. "Young master, my handsome smile is in vain." Now he was in a bit of a dilemma. There was no village in front of him or any store in the back. If he missed this stop, he might stall halfway. It's still some way away from Shanghai City, and it would be too eye-catching if you ran directly there. Looking at the girl in front of him, he really didn't want to use force to intimidate a woman. What the? If I had known it would be such a hassle, I might as well have seen if there was a ride. The young man was Wu Wei. After returning to Blue Star, he set out to go to the nearby Shanghai City because there was the only precious metals exchange in the country. There is a large amount of gold, silver, and platinum inside, which is the primary transportation goal that Wu Wei has set long ago. Unfortunately, it is really inconvenient to travel now. Without a driver's license, he could only choose to ride a motorcycle on the road. He originally thought that it would not be a big problem since his destination was not far, but unexpectedly he encountered a problem. To be honest, the speed at which he ran at full speed was no slower than that of a car, but he didn't want to do anything too eye-catching unless he had to. Just when he was in trouble, someone else walked into the gas station. Wu Wei turned around and saw 2 young men carrying metal baseball bats walking to the counter with malicious intentions, apparently looking for the girl. "Girl, you are indeed hiding here, making it easy for us to find her. Let me see where you can run today." When the girl saw them, her expression changed obviously, she clenched her fists and looked wary. "It's you scum again. What do you want to do? I advise you to be careful. This is a key area under national control. If you mess around, you will not be able to reap the consequences." As a result, her threat not only failed to frighten the 2 of them, but instead angered them. One of the young men hit the counter with a stick, smashing the entire counter into pieces. The force was so powerful that it was eye-catching. "I'm already a Superman, why are I still afraid of this? The country can't take care of itself, so it will take care of you, a little girl. Today I have to play you little fool to death." The girl was startled and couldn't help but step back. When her heart was in despair, a steady voice suddenly sounded. "If I help you clean them up, will you cheer me up?" The 3 of them turned their heads in shock, only to see Wu Wei standing aside with a calm face, looking at the girl, waiting for her answer. The girl was stunned for a moment, and then she realized what she was doing. She said in a dumbfounded voice, "Look, you are not an arrogant person. You must have some confidence in your own strength if you dare to ask this question, right? So, wouldn't it be more effective if you directly ask a hero to save the beauty? Isn't this how normal scenes are performed? Wu Wei replied rudely. No need, I don't want to flirt with you. The girl suddenly felt helpless. You will make me lose face. Okay, why don't you just come on? What a big deal. You can help me get rid of them first. The two young men who were listening became more and more angry, but they still retained some sense. They did not immediately regard Wu Wei as the girl's accomplice, but sternly warned, Brother, I advise you not to meddle in other people's business. It's none of your business here, stay away. If I accidentally hurt you, don't blame me for not warning you. Wu Wei only smiled at them, then raised his fist and jumped forward. Prince Li's were nothing more than two Blue Star Lords who had reached the second level of personal strength. Wu Wei knocked them unconscious in the blink of an eye, leaving the girl stunned for a moment. Before she could react, Wu Wei woke her up. Miss, it's your turn to fulfill your promise. With that said, Wu Wei picked up the iron oil drum at his feet and handed it to her. Please fill it up for me. The girl took the tin bucket and looked at the two people on the ground with some hesitation. It has nothing to do with me. It's up to you. Don't tell me about your grievances, and don't tell me how inhuman they are. I'm not interested in any of this. Wu Wei interrupted her directly. The girl was helpless and turned around to swipe his card for gas. After Wu Wei rode away on his motorcycle, the girl said something to his back. TCH, wouldn't it be so cool? Late at night, the stars are shining brightly. The famous National Precious Metals Exchange in Shanghai City welcomed an uninvited guest. Due to the fusion of planes, all units and institutions across the country that have nothing to do with survival in other worlds have stopped operating, so this place has also been closed, and no one has ever come here. It was as if the precious metals stored inside that once symbolized wealth had become useless waste. In fact, this is indeed the case. However, for Wu Wei, this place is a huge treasure house. The closed door couldn't stop Wu Wei at all. The power of life fire was concentrated on his palm, which was more labor-intensive than an ethane gas welding gun. After entering the exchange, he became even more unscrupulous. A suspended ball of holy light was raised as lighting. Wu Wei entered the door all the way. When he saw the surveillance camera, he popped out a stone and blew it up like a bullet. When encountering a locked door, use the pointing sword to use Yanye swordsmanship to strike with a high-temperature flame sword and break through the door directly. Logically speaking, such a violent act should trigger the early warning system soon. Unfortunately, in order to save energy, the country has cut off the power here, so even if he acts so roughly, it has still not been disturbed by others. Soon, he came to a thick alloy gate. This door is so strong that even a large amount of explosives may not be able to stop it. However, Wu Wei didn't care much. Modern technology was aimed at real-world technology and was not applicable to the power of the fantasy world. Holy Divine Art Light Sword. Massive amounts of holy power converged on Wu Wei's fingertips, turning into a dazzling sword of light. Swish, 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 the three swords were slashed out, and the alloy gate was immediately cut into a triangular incision that could allow one person to enter. With one punch, his blood turned into a dragon, violently blasting away the cut metal part, and Wu Wei entered calmly. Under the white light of the lighting holy light ball, in the all-metal warehouse, countless gold bricks are neatly stacked on the shelves, reflecting the alluring light. Wu Wei couldn't help but smile and quickly took out the storage bag. The next day, in a small roadside restaurant in Shanghai City, Wu Wei exchanged a small bag of rice and a few pieces of dried meat for a hearty breakfast, and was eating breakfast safely in the store. When money loses its role, barter has become the main way for people to trade. Exchanging more food for other people's services and processing is the only relatively frequent transaction at the moment. It just so happened that Wu Wei, who had an entire country from another world as his backing, was not short of food. The food he brought here in the storage bag was enough for him to spend a year on Blue Star. If there weren't many people opening restaurants now, he could even have a Manchurian banquet at Blue Star every day. While I was eating, the TV that was still playing news in the store suddenly broadcast a new news. Last night, the Shanghai Precious Metals Exchange suffered serious damage. Hundreds of tons of gold, silver and platinum stored there disappeared. Based on the traces left at the scene, the police suspected that a high-level Lord gang may have committed the crime. Quote, the owner of the breakfast shop was also sitting in front of the TV watching the news. When he saw this, he shook his head and laughed. In what age are people still snatching these? Can they be taken away after a year? The forest is really big and there are all kinds of birds. Wu Wei, who was sitting aside, smiled and said silently in his heart, yes, why else would I snatch it? Of course, you can't tell anyone this. This wave is called making a fortune with a dull voice. When he was almost done eating, Wu Wei was thinking about where to go next. On the list of items to be transported, most of them are metal materials and various types of gems and crystals. There are probably dozens of them, all of which can be used as high-end materials in other worlds or have special uses. That's all he knows at this stage. He has no professional knowledge about herbal medicines and biological materials, and it is not easy to distinguish and compare them, so there are almost none. After thinking briefly, he determined the next object. Metal element, bismuth. Among all the blue star metals with practical value in other worlds, this is the most cost-effective. The only things more valuable than it are the two main nuclear materials, uranium and plutonium. The former is a high-level magic metal worth no less than mithril in other worlds. Whether it is building a human mage tower or a caster unit recruitment building of other races, this material needs to be added to make high-level magic equipment and lords. It is also a good choice for equipment. If Wu Wei wants to build an army of spellcasters, this material must be reserved. The latter two are truly top-level magic metals in other worlds and are widely used. They can be used to make top-level equipment, high-end magic props, one-time forbidden spell props and even legendary potions. The most important thing is that they are also one of the main materials for building the metallic and ferrous dragon nests, and they are also the only dragon nest construction materials that Wu Wei lacks. If he can get it, he can build 2 dragons when he returns to the continent of Ain this time. Unfortunately, even in Blue Star, these 2 metals were strictly controlled. Apart from the state, he really couldn't think of where else to get them. So he could only give up temporarily and look for other metal materials that could be used in other worlds. After making the decision, he immediately set off to visit the former rare metal trading area. However, not long after he walked out of the breakfast shop, he keenly sensed that someone was staring at him. And there were quite a few of them, and they had already surrounded him. Wu Wei's eyes narrowed and he couldn't help but frown. Someone is following me. Why is that? Could it be that what I did last night was discovered so quickly? No, if the country still cares about these gold and silver, it wouldn't have let him get it so easily last night. Wu Wei was a little confused, but now he could only resort to tricks. Anyway, get rid of them first. With a thought in his heart, he calmly turned around and turned into an alley. After a while, 2 pedestrians walked into the alley with the same expressions as if nothing had happened. However, as soon as he entered, he saw that Wu Wei had disappeared in the alley. They were startled and immediately whispered to the secret intercom on their collars, "Attention all units, the target is missing. He has discovered us." After saying that, he ran towards the depths of the alley. However, just after they left, Wu Wei's figure appeared out of thin air at the entrance of the alley. It turns out that he was here just now, but he was invisible. Holy Divine Art Shadowless Folding Curtain. This is a magic that he developed based on optical principles after he used his experience points to upgrade the magic that came with the Holy Glory of Redemption to LV5. The effect is that the person being cast can become invisible while remaining motionless. Because it was just developed, it cannot move at a small scale while being invisible like the invisibility technique in another world, so it has no combat value, but it can be used to get rid of tracking now. After getting rid of the pursuer behind him, Wu Wei quickened his pace and returned the same way, quickly leaving in the opposite direction. Only when he walked through the streets, changing directions constantly, and didn't even know where he was going, did he relax a little. However, when he was just about to find a way to leave the city, a group of people wearing black uniforms suddenly appeared in front of Wu Wei. The leader was an elegant young man with a gentle smile. He looked at Wu Wei with a smile and said, "Mr. Wu has good tactics, but he underestimates us in the country too much." This sentence already made their position clear. Wu Wei's eyes narrowed slightly, and Long Zon's blood energy turned into a roaring dragon phantom behind him, and his murderous intent suddenly appeared. You were wrong, I just don't dare to underestimate the power of the country, so I chose to run. The implication is that if he was really arrogant, he would not have chosen to run when he was being followed just now, but would have chosen to attack them. This is both a statement of fact and a threat. Wu Wei was telling them, it's not that I don't dare to kill you, I'm just afraid of trouble. If you really have to force me, I don't mind killing you. The young man opposite was also a smart man, so he naturally understood what he meant. He immediately raised his hands to show that he and others were not a threat, and explained at the same time. Mr. Wu Wei, we are the special service personnel of the Daxia Foreign World Strategy Bureau. I am the Deputy Director Lin Qing. I can assure you that we have no malicious intentions in coming to you. We are just adhering to a sincere and cooperative attitude and want to have a good relationship with you. Let's talk. Wu Wei didn't say anything after listening, but his mind was full of thoughts. It's not that Wu Wei has never thought about cooperating with the government. On the contrary, in all his assumptions, the best situation is to cooperate with the state. But this is also the most difficult type of risk to control. The situation is so complex and people's hearts are equally unpredictable, so he does not dare to take risks. To be on the safe side, Wu Wei abandoned this option very early. But looking at the current situation, it seems that everything is possible again. Lin Qing, who claimed to be the deputy director of the Alien Strategy Bureau, saw Wu Wei's hesitation from Wu Wei's expression and knew there was something going on, so he waved his hands to the subordinates around him and said, "You all step aside first, I will follow this little brother, let's talk alone." The subordinates did not hesitate, immediately obeyed his order and quickly dispersed. Wu Wei knew that they wouldn't go far and were definitely still nearby, but the scene now looked at least less tense. After all his subordinates had retreated, Lin Qing walked up to Wu Wei without any precautions and invited him. "Mr. Wu, let's find a quiet place to have a good talk. If you are still not satisfied after the talk, you can take my life at any time." Wu Wei felt no threat from him, so he simply put away the blood dragon shadow and decided to talk to him. Point 0. Don't make me sound like a murderer. As long as you don't think of me as a fool, I won't have to go against the country. Lin Qing smiled and replied, "Daxia will never infringe on the interests of its citizens, please rest assured, Mr. Wu." Wu Wei smiled and was noncommittal. In a completely cleared cafe, Wu Wei looked at the young deputy director Lin Qing sitting opposite him and asked calmly, "Although I have already made some guesses, let me ask you, what do you want to talk to me about?" Lin Qing smiled and explained, "Of course I want to talk about cooperation." After finishing speaking, he thought for a moment and added, "Complete equality, mutually beneficial and win-win cooperation." Wu Wei did not listen to these scene words and asked directly, "How to cooperate?" "Let me tell you in detail." Seeing that he was still testing, Lin Qing simply made it clear. "We will come forward to collect all the items you need in Daxia for Mr. Wu. Mr. Wu, you only need to help us take some things to the world of Ain and hand them over to our people if your ability allows." Quote. After Wu Wei heard this, he suddenly narrowed his eyes. "How are you sure that I have such ability?" "With a little investigation and a little reasoning, you will know this kind of thing." Lin Qing explained with a smile. "The total number of precious metals missing from the exchange is hundreds of tons, but the traces left on the scene are only yours. Of course we can guess that you have means of compressing storage space." Quote. "Then we further speculate that a Blue Star Lord who already possesses such powerful destructive power and has the ability to transport large amounts of supplies would want such a strong man to want something that has obviously lost its value." When Wu Wei heard this, he wanted to find fault, but Lin Qing had already spoken first. "The answer will definitely not be that he likes gold and wants to sleep on gold, but 987, these things are not worthless. On the contrary, their value is high in the eyes of the other party. To the point where I have to get it even at the risk of exposing myself to a strength that far exceeds that of Tongji. Thinking about this, what value do these precious metals from the Blue Star world have at this time? No matter how you think about it, we can only think of one possibility, and that is, these things can be taken to other worlds, become the opponent's resource in another world. According to our investigation of the world of Ain, the value of gold, silver and other precious metals in other worlds is higher than that on Blue Star. At this point, we have enough reasons to believe that Mr. Wu, you should have the special ability to transport materials from the Blue Star world to the Ain world. In a more optimistic case, you may even be able to transport materials back and forth between the two worlds. As for what specific ability this is, we don't know, but there is a high probability that it will not be something like a space prop, because we have already tried this kind of experiment, and the only thing that can be brought back from another world is our own strength. That's all. Actually, Mr. Wu doesn't have to doubt his actions, because from the day the Alien Strategy Bureau was established, we have already considered whether there will be any special cases among billions of humans. To this end, we have made some arrangements across the country. Some places seem to have given up control, but in fact they are just baits we deliberately place there, waiting for lucky people like you, Mr. Guo, who have the potential to become partners to come. After hearing this, Wu Wei understood everything. He had previously wondered why the authorities would react so quickly when something went wrong in a place that had lost control and find him the next day. It turns out that the official trap has long been there, waiting for the big fish that may appear to enter the net on their own. No, this is a big fish, he has been caught directly. Wu Wei simply responded simply. It's talent. I opened a talent activation scroll in the initial treasure box. It is with this talent that I can bring Blue Star's things to the continent of Ain. Lin Qing nodded, made a note of this in his mind, and decided to go back and ask the people below to pay more attention to the breakthrough point of talent ability. If there are several more Blue Star Lords with similar talents, how can it help Daxia? Will be bigger. Thinking of this, he asked again, Mr. Wu, since we have been honest, may I take the liberty to ask, are there any restrictions on your innate ability? Wu Wei thought for a while and replied, as long as it's not too complicated or huge, there should be no problem. The treasures that consume a lot of conversion are basically treasures with huge data, such as artifacts, game territories, top-level life forms, etc. The things on the Blue Star are all mortal objects without magic power, and the energy consumption required for conversion is it's not big, so as long as it can fit into the storage bag, there's basically no problem. Hearing what he said, Lin Qing's eyes were filled with joy and he said excitedly, that's great. Let's talk about the details of cooperation. Wu Wei didn't object, and the two of them started flirting with each other. The conversation lasted for about 2 hours, and Wu Wei was very satisfied with the conditions he proposed. Article 1. The Strategy Bureau will mobilize the power of the whole country to help Wu Wei collect the materials, technologies and items he needs. Wu Wei only needs to help the country bring some materials and technology-related things to the Al-Ain continent and hand them over to those in his field, affiliated to the official designated Blue Star Lord of the country. If no suitable person can be found in the Chengguang domain where Wu Wei is located, then Wu Wei will be asked to temporarily keep it until the candidate for the handover appears. Article 2. While Wu Wei is at Blue Star, he will be employed as a special advisor to the Outer Worlds Strategy Bureau and will receive the highest level of official protection, but there will be no restrictions on his personal freedom. What are Wu Wei's requirements? Strategy: the Bureau will try its best to satisfy you. Originally, Lin Qing prepared these 2 conditions, but Wu Wei finally added one more. Article 3. In addition to domestic resources, Wu Wei has the right to demand full official cooperation and support for his overseas material collection operations, including military support. As soon as this request came out, Lin Qing immediately understood what he meant. Good guy, we just reached cooperation with the official, and now we are thinking about foreign resource inventories. This guy has a really big appetite. Lin Qing was suddenly embarrassed. This item is beyond my scope of authority and involves many uncontrollable factors. I can't agree to it right away. I have to ask my superiors for instructions before I can give you an answer. Wu Wei also saw the embarrassment on his face, so he added, the resources harvested from each joint action will be divided into 70/30ths, 70% for me and 30% for you. If you can trust me. Lin Qing's eyes suddenly lit up. He rolled his eyes and suddenly whispered, 55, I will help you fight for it. Based on my experience, most of the higher-ups will agree to this amount. Wu Wei raised the corner of his mouth and laughed wantonly. Make a deal. 7 days passed quickly. Before traveling back to the world of Ain, the Daxia Foreign World Strategy Bureau handed him the first batch of supplies. They were all collected according to the list Wu Wei gave them. When Lin Qing took him to the big warehouse, Wu Wei became uneasy on the spot. Although he knew that the country's action must be extraordinary, he still almost couldn't hold back when he saw all kinds of materials piled up in a huge warehouse. Not to mention precious metals such as gold, silver, copper, and platinum. Even those rare metals are available on demand. Lin Qing also specially prepared a list for him to facilitate his checking. Wu Wei looked at it from ear to ear and shouted in his heart that he had made a fortune. 20 tons of gold, 100 tons of silver, 500 tons of brass, and 50 tons of platinum. These are fine, and they are indeed a lot for individuals, but they are just a drop in the bucket for the country. What Wu Wei really cares about are other rare metals. As mentioned before, the official prepared 100 tons of bismuth for him. Then it can be used as an additive for 24 types of magic potions in other worlds, and can be directly used to make basic level magic potion metal, molybdenum, 50 tons. Metal that can be used as the main material for making magic equipment and staffs, titanium, 50 tons. Metal that can be used to build high-end equipment, tungsten, 50 tons. Metals that can be used as enchanting materials, indium, 50 tons. In addition, there are 10 tons each of tantalum, lithium, nickel, zirconium, chromium, cobalt and other metals. These metal materials are also rare and precious in other worlds, but their uses are relatively simple, so I don't want too much. If needed in the future can be collected again. In addition to metals, there are also various types of jade including crystals, gems, tourmaline, diamonds, jade, and jade, each of which is measured in tons, ranging from a few tons to dozens of tons. These are materials that can be used to make magic equipment and props. What worried Wu Wei the most was the two heavy yellow and black boxes in front of him, which contain simply purified uranium and plutonium respectively. The quantity is 1 ton each, and each kilogram is individually packaged. These are naturally not uranium-235 and plutonium-239. It is impossible to give Wu Wei that kind of thing, but these are enough to be used as construction materials for the dragon's nest. Although it is only 1 ton, it is more than enough to build dozens of giant dragon nests. It can be said that in the entire warehouse, the most valuable items are stored in these 2 radiation-proof boxes. Lin Qing was still afraid that Wu Wei would be dissatisfied, so he explained to him, "Our country's uranium and plutonium reserves are not high, and the current situation is special. We can only get so much for the time being, but next we will focus on collecting. There should be a lot of these materials next time." Wu Wei was noncommittal about this and didn't really care. When he goes abroad, to those countries with huge nuclear material reserves, there will naturally be no shortage of these things. At this stage, there is enough for him, so there is no need to worry. After the handover is completed, the move will naturally begin. It took Wu Wei a whole day to collect all these things in several storage bags, and he almost exceeded his storage limit. After he completed the storage, there was not much time left to return to the world of Ain. With deep expectations, Wu Wei came to the world of Ain again in a fit of dizziness. When he opened his eyes again, Wu Wei immediately asked the maids Ram and Rem to call several confidants over. After everyone arrived, Wu Wei asked them about the situation of the troops. After learning that everything was ready, Wu Wei immediately made a decision. The oath-taking meeting will be held tomorrow, and we will go to the frontier to conquer the Holy Beast. This is the last war to completely control this country. To be honest, Wu Wei can't wait for it. The next day, 500,000 troops gathered outside the royal capital. They were the troops selected by Wu Wei to participate in this war. At this time, after receiving God-given soldiers from nobles from all over the country, the number of troops in the royal capital has reached 80 million. Wu Wei specially selected 500,000 elites among them and prepared to take them to the south this time. It is worth mentioning that most of the low-level troops were abandoned by Wu Wei and stayed to guard the royal capital. All he took away were mid to high-level troops. The specific composition is as follows: 20,000 second-level scouts, 200,000 third-level archers, 120,000 fourth-order light cavalry, 80,000 fifth-level swordsmen. There are 10,000 fifth-level night guards, 50,000 sixth-level mages, 5,000 seventh-level knights, plus a few dragon blood warriors, furnace knights and thousands of medical soldiers. The total number is about 500,000. There are several legendary powerhouses and holy domain leaders, as well as the heroic units responsible for leading troops, and these are all separately. More than half of the troops are at level 4 or above. This kind of army can already be called a luxury. At this moment, the Wuyongyang formation is neat and majestic on the outskirts of the royal city. Wu Wei stood at the top of the city and didn't say much nonsense. Even in such a large swearing-in meeting, he only said a few words. Soldiers, we have put down the rebellion in the country, but I think you have not forgotten that at our doorstep, there is still a group of savage and stupid orcs who are burning, killing, looting, infringing on our territory, and protecting our compatriots. When I raised a counter-insurgency army from the border, I told them that once the rebellion in the country is suppressed, I will take you back to the southern border and have a good fight with the orcs. Let us humans fall into the snow. Shame on you. Now, it's time to fulfill your promise. I will take you to kill the orcs now. All officers and men listen to the order and follow me on the expedition. As soon as the swearing-in ceremony ended, Wu Wei set off with an army of 500,000 people. Hegnev and John Hal followed him, while Alexiel, Seal and Rhodes all stayed in the royal capital. Alexiel guarded the royal capital to protect Queen Isariel, while Charles was in charge of the administrative affairs of the royal capital, and Rhodes commanded the royal capital's garrison. In addition, there are still 300,000 troops, and there will be no problems in the royal capital in a short time. Only in this way can Wu Wei safely clean up the southern border and start implementing the next stage of his plan. That's right, he had never regarded the orc army raging on the border of the kingdom as his main target. The opponent he really focused on was actually the entire King of Stormrage. If any outsider knew what he was thinking, they would definitely laugh at him for not understanding it himself. Because King Stormrage is one of the largest forces in the entire Aran region, the current situation is that the Human Kingdom Alliance and the two Elven Empires, the Cyan Empire Yalindal and the Silvermoon Empire, can cooperate with King Stormrage. Court confrontation. At most, there is a federation of Demahuman tribes in the Lost Swamp on the other side, which restrains part of the energy of the two Elven Empires for the Stormrage court. Such a powerful orc force, let alone Wu Wei who had just taken control of the Cornflower Kingdom, would probably not be able to defeat them even if the Kingdom Alliance were singled out to confront them. Wu Wei's plan to conquer the entire Stormrage court was simply overestimating his capabilities. But Wu Wei was not just thinking, he actually made a detailed plan. Strictly speaking, he was fighting for the idea of the local forces in the entire area surrounding the Aran Mountains. It's not that he overestimates his capabilities, but he is holding back his misfortune and is ready to cause trouble. Before that, the southern border of Bluebonnet was his planned base camp, and he had to completely control it. Therefore, even if it was not for the sake of the country, but for his own benefit, he had to make this trip to eliminate the orcs in this fiefdom. Kill them cleanly. Because there are no low-level infantry with the slowest marching speed, namely spearmen and sword and shield soldiers, Wu Wei's army marches much faster than normal. Within a week, Wu Wei's army marched into the southern border. That is to say, Wu Wei has never had a smile on his face since entering the border area. On the way to the march, Wu Wei had already seen many groups of refugees fleeing the border. Their condition is very bad. Most of them are numb and skinny. They dare not approach the marching team even if they are human troops and not orcs. For them, Wu Wei just sent people to the cities along the rear to deliver orders, asking the nobles in the cities to resettle these refugees who had walked thousands of miles just to escape. After entering the border area, the situation becomes even more miserable. Bones can be seen everywhere on the wasteland, some starving to death, some being killed, but most of them are piles of white bones. Groups of orc soldiers roamed the wilderness wantonly, slaughtering all refugees in sight. Slain humans are taken away or eaten on the spot, either by the orc soldiers themselves or by feeding them to their mounts. The only difference between them and monsters is that they will put people on the fire and roast them half-cooked before eating them, and they will feel disgusted while eating. Wu Wei's scouting force captured several orc leaders who could speak the common language of Ain. From their mouths, they learned that the orcs usually do not eat humans, but this is wartime, and the orc army is here to plunder food. I didn't bring much rations at all. Their wartime style was to eat whatever they could get, and if that didn't work, they would use the enemy as rations. This is a rule that the orcs do not follow, and it is this rule that caused the white bones in this wilderness. The plundering army sent by the orcs in the early stage amounted to 400,000. After breaking through the border, the orc commanders saw that there was no reinforcement from the Cornflower Kingdom, and they quickly came up with the idea of completely conquering the border and then continuing to attack the southern border of the kingdom. An army of 300,000 troops was gathered from the rear. There are close to 700,000 orcs. How many border citizens are eaten every day? Wu Wei didn't make any calculations, he just accelerated his march and killed all the orcs he saw on the road. He had expected the tragedy at the border, but he did not expect that the actual situation was beyond his acceptance, and even his steely heart, which had long been prepared for awakening, was shaken. It was not that Our Lady of Wu Wei had sympathy and pity for the humans in the other world, but because the hell-like scene on the border was inevitably related to him. Although Keishi Castle cannot be defended, and the orcs will break through the border sooner or later, if it were not for Wu Wei, the situation would not be so bad, and the entire border area would not fall so quickly. Wu Wei seized the counter-rebellion army raised by the border lords and took away the small amount of armed forces in this area, making this area even more vulnerable to the iron heel of the orcs. A border lord who disobeyed Wu Wei once questioned him. If he took away a large number of soldiers and food in the territory to suppress the rebellion, how should the orcs resist when they attack the territory, and how should the lord protect the people in the territory? Wu Wei did not give an answer at that time, but he already knew the answer. Anyway, you can't stop us with these few troops. Instead of dying in vain, why not follow me and do something that can really save this country? It was a cruel reason, Manuo Zhao, but Wu Wei used this reason to convince himself. He is extremely sure that he is a cold-blooded villain. As long as he can achieve his goal, no matter how miserable the other world is, it has nothing to do with him. But when he came here again and saw the tragic scenes in front of him, he was still shaken. He suddenly felt that he had to bear at least one-third of the responsibility. Thinking like this, he felt that this statement was too petty, so he secretly made a decision in his heart. No, I don't think so clearly. I will bear all the sins on this entire border. Listen to the souls wandering in the wasteland. If I die, I will naturally go to hell. If I can still live, then I promise to bury the entire orcs of Stormrage with you. Not to atone, just because I want to do it. In the first step of entering the border, Wu Wei placed the army's first target on the Baron of Bone. Because that is where Wu Wei created the Long Night Guard, and there is still a building exclusive to the Night Watch, the Great Wall of Despair. Wu Wei wants to take back the place, and then use the Oath of Night Vigil to transform all 80,000 swordsmen in his hands into Night Guards to create an invincible army. A military formation composed of only 10,000 night watchmen can compete head-on with the White Lion Army's military formation. If this scale is expanded to 90,000, how powerful will it be? Wu Wei has great expectations for this. The next morning, the troops arrived at the Baron of Born. On the way there, the wandering team of orcs had basically disappeared. With such a huge army, the orcs would soon be aware of their presence and would naturally respond. Withdraw the nearby orc squad and concentrate on defending the city. Even the most clueless orc commander can think of such a basic strategy. Wu Wei soon saw a large army of orcs in the Baron of Born. They were concentrated under the city wall in a mess and had been waiting for Wu Wei's army for a long time. The city wall behind them was already filled with the orc tribe's long-range arms, the 3rd-level orc spear thrower and the spellcaster arm, the 6th-level ancestor sacrifice. Conservative estimates put the number of orc troops here at about 200,000, which is about the same size as the orc vanguard army when they attacked Quarry Castle. Wu Wei is not surprised by their current formation. The orc army is the least suitable among the major intelligent races to defend the city. As the most recognized army in the world of Ain, what they are best at is in open areas. Fight the enemy head-on. At this moment, even if they faced an enemy that was 2.5 times more numerous than their own, they still chose to fight under the city. The defenders on the city wall were only auxiliary. When Wu Wei's army appeared, the priests on the city immediately cast strengthening spells to bless the orc soldiers below the city, and then they immediately launched a charge. 108th level orc warriors riding various wilderness monsters are in the front, and 307th level totem warriors are guarding the 2 wings. The tip of the army's sword is enough to tear apart any enemy's formation defense. 30,000 4th-level wolf cavalry followed closely, followed by 10,000 5th-level berserker warriors, 50,000 2nd-level strong orc warriors, and 50,000 1st-level orc warriors. The orc army of more than 140,000 howled and charged, and the sky suddenly filled with excitement and power. However, Wu Wei looked at them as if they were a group of dead bodies. All knights, charge! Night Watch Legion, military formation. Other legions surrounded the city, and not a single fly was allowed to go. After a few orders, 5,000 7th-level human knights and 120,000 4th-level light cavalry launched a counterattack against the orc army. Their movements were uniform, and the sound of their horses treading the ground was as dense as thunder, with an unstoppable momentum that would smash everything in front of them to pieces. 120,000 light cavalry followed closely behind, all on horseback, setting up bows and shooting arrows. After 3 rounds in a row, they released 3 waves of black arrow rain, which fell into the orc army, taking away a large number of lives. Then they also drew out their cavalry machetes and prepared to harvest the enemy. The Night Watch Legion charged from the other side, and the red light of the military formation lit up on the battlefield. The red flames rose into the sky, splitting into a huge fire dragon and smashing into the front of the orc army, exploding into a boundless sea of fire. The orc generals on the city wall were immediately shocked. It's a human military formation. However, before he could finish being surprised, when the 2 charging groups were about to collide, the front of the human side suddenly lit up with the light of fighting spirit. 5,000 rays of fighting spirit connected together to form a solid glorious city wall, CECD. The orc forwards, who had just received a heavy blow, had no time to react. They bumped into them in a mess and were smashed to pieces. The knights rushed into the orc army like razors, treading a path of blood along the way. The cavalrymen behind them wielded their swords and slashed indiscriminately, killing them in large numbers. In one face-to-face encounter, the orcs were at an extreme disadvantage, and it could be said that the outcome was decided. So many human knights. Didn't it say that this country is suffering from rebellion? Where can such an army come from? This must be the coalition sent by the Ugly Kingdom Alliance. The orc general gritted his teeth and roughly pulled his subordinate over to him, yelling at him, "Hurry up and take your people to notify the chief and ask for reinforcements. We can't hold on for long. Tell him to stop playing hide and seek with the undead like those flies. We have been delayed by them for too much time. This is not our territory anyway. What are we afraid of the undead plague? If he doesn't concentrate his forces to deal with this human coalition, he will never be able to occupy this place. Let's take his troops home as soon as possible." The subordinate also had a square head and asked hesitantly, "Is this what I'm going to tell the chief? With the chief's violent temper, he will just kill me." The general suddenly roared helplessly, "Is your head full of shit? I asked you to bring the information, but I didn't ask you to be disrespectful to the chief. Don't you want to put it another way? Get out of here and bring some dragon teeth knights with you. Go from heaven." "Yes." The subordinate immediately punched his chest hard and turned around to leave. There was already a one-sided massacre under the city, and a small group of 9th-level orc flying dragon knights flew into the sky and fled into the distance. They didn't know that they had been targeted by strong men in the human army. Under the double blow of the military formation and the elite charging group of the human race, the orc army was unable to organize a decent offensive at all, and was defeated throughout the whole process without the ability to fight back. When Wu Wei's army continued to shrink the encirclement and approach the city, the overwhelming rain of arrows and group attacks of fireball skills quickly knocked out the orcs' long-range troops on the city wall. In just a few hours, the city was broken and the enemy army was completely wiped out. No orcs escaped, except for the military information relay personnel who had already escaped before Wu Wei's army besieged the city. The strangest thing about this battle is that the legendary orc unit did not appear from beginning to end, although even if it did appear, it would not change the outcome. Only Wu Wei knew the reason, but he didn't say it and no one dared to ask. After capturing the Baron of Bourne, Wu Wei immediately pulled 80,000 swordsmen to the vicinity of the Great Wall. Once the Oath of the Night's Watch is completed, the Night's Watch Legion will reach a size of 90,000. With such an invincible army, Wu Wei is unbeatable in this area. Even if there are demigods among the orcs, Wu Wei is not afraid at all. Chapter 91. That night, 80,000 swordsmen swore an oath to stay vigil, and after consuming 8 million Wu Wei's spiritual crystals, they successfully transformed into the Long Night Guard. At this point, the first battle was won, and the first purpose of coming to the border was accomplished. Next, the only thing left was to eliminate the orcs in the border. Because the orc army was not given the opportunity to pass on information during the siege, the specific information about Wu Wei's army of 500,000 was not known to the orc army. They just knew that a human army of 500,000 people had entered the border area and reoccupied the territory of Baron Boyne. However, from the fact that Wu Wei wiped out the 200,000 orcs defending the city in one day, we can guess that the strength of Wu Wei's army should not be underestimated, so the orcs decided to concentrate their forces to compete with this human army. On the second day after the renovation of the Baron of Bone, the intelligence personnel sent by Wu Wei reported that the orc troops plundering all over the border began to gathered towards the quarrying site. Wu Wei understood that he had to concentrate his efforts to fight him. It's a pity that Wu Wei will not let them get what they want, and now is the time to officially activate the backup team. Previously, Wu Wei had transferred an elite legion composed of high-level undead troops from the City of Dark Night. The number was small, only more than 30,000, but it had extremely high mobility and could be said to come and go as quickly as possible. Just look at their composition to see how mobile they are. Legendary arms: 12 Nether Dragon Knights, 3 Hell Dragons, 10 Frost Bone Dragons, 12 Corpse Witch Dragons, and 22 Ghost Dragons. 9th level arms: 300 Death Knights riding 9th level Undead Dragons. 8th level arms: 500 Dark Knights riding 8th level Undead Monsters. 7th level arms: 1000 Death Knights. 6th level troops: 1000 Vampires, 2000 Ghost Warlocks, and 3000 Corpse Witches. Level 5 troops: 3000 Soul-Catching Ghosts, 5000 Undead Swordsmen. Tier 4 arms: 15,000 Skeleton Cavalry. Some of them were recruited from the capital of Night, but most of them were undead units converted through the Undead Conversion Tower. Although not all the undead army in the base camp were mobilized, but it also reached more than half of the total strength. After they were transferred to the border of the Cornflower Kingdom by Wu Wei, they relied on their high mobility and the combat effectiveness of all middle and high-level troops to continuously wander around the border, engage in guerrilla warfare, and interfere with the actions of the orc army. With the cooperation of the undead army that Wu Wei had previously raised at the border with the underworld spiritualism, he successfully contained the pace of the orc army. It is precisely because of the existence of this group of undead guerrillas that after breaking through the border, the orcs have not been able to go deeper and invade the southern region of the kingdom to disrupt Wu Wei's rebellion against the Jin Kingdom. It was also because they had to deal with the exaggerated number of legendary troops and 9th level troops in the undead army that the orcs gathered all the legendary troops to protect the safety of the Legion headquarters. After all, a high-level unit of this quality can already be used as a beheading force. If one day one is not careful and the commander of the army is killed by a sudden air attack from the other side, that would be very inappropriate. Now, they are still wandering in the wilderness on the border, coming out from time to attack orcs everywhere. Wu Wei planned to use them as vanguards to eliminate the effective strength of the orcs. When Wu Wei's army rushed to Keishi Castle, the two armies joined forces to strangle the orc army. However, the current undead army is still lacking in size. Before Wu Wei prepares for the war, he should strengthen it to make them really become an undead army. Have all the corpses on the battlefield been disposed of? Back to the Lord, the corpses of 200,000 orcs have all been gathered under the city. Very good. Let Hegniv and General Jonhar lead the army to set off immediately and march towards Quarry Castle. Yes, the army quickly regrouped and set off, but this time it was Hegniv and John Hal who led the army. Wu Wei himself stayed in the Baron of Bourne with 2 maids of the Angel of Sin. No one knows why he did this, but fortunately, the composition of this army is extremely simple, and they are all Wu Wei's confidants, so no one will question him. In the evening, Wu Wei stood on the top of the city wall and watched his human army disappear into the distance. He took a deep breath and calmed down. Point 0. Let's start. If he wants to expand the size of the undead army, Wu Wei's underworld spiritualism is a powerful weapon, but in his opinion, just a lord's skill is far from enough. He needs better means to achieve his goals. And this method, with his current strength, can already be extracted from the game account in the consciousness space. It's a coincidence that although he played the human race in his previous life, in order to make money, he successfully exposed the 3-god-level equipment of the ghost race and prepared to sell them to rich players who played the ghost race. As a result, the game version was updated before he had time to take action, and the ghost tribe directly became the weakest race, causing the prices of all corresponding game items to plummet. The 3 artifacts of the ghost tribe in his hand were just smashed into his hands, and there was no pressure to sell them. Nowadays, these 3 Ghost Clan explosive weapons have become an important help for Wu Wei to realize his plan. It can only be said that fate has a trick on people. Wu Wei lamented the impermanence of fate while activating his natural ability. The extraordinary power in his body was instantly drained, and Wu Wei staggered due to the weakness he had not felt for a long time, almost losing his balance. But everything was worth it. A sheathed long sword with a black background and gold rim appeared in Wu Wei's hand, faintly exuding a heart-stopping aura. Wu Wei looked at the simple yet exquisite sword in his hand and couldn't help but smile. The 3 major artifacts of the ghost tribe are the Sword of Hades, the Cloak of Styx, and the Ring of Hades. What he manifested this time is the Sword of Hades, which is the most suitable for attacking. In addition to the unexpected achievement of the founding holy book Myth Chronicle, this was the first time he took out top-level gaming equipment from the consciousness space. I don't know what kind of changes the artifacts in the game will have in the world of Ain. Wu Wei thought and checked the attributes of the sword in his hand. The Sword of Hades Yulindal, a lower-level artifact, bound and recognized as the Master, Death with legal authority. 2. Introduction. One of the 3 artifacts of authority owned by a death god in the unknown world. It is the key to open the door to the underworld. The original authority level was the middle artifact level, but because it came from a different world, after passing through the illusion the transformation with reality does not fully conform to the laws of the world of Ain, so the level is reduced to a lower level artifact, but it still contains the divine power to make all things return to silence. Basic attributes. All attributes are increased by 30%. Those hit by this sword have a 10% chance of dying, regardless of the strength gap. Those killed by this sword will have a 50% chance of being converted into undead of the same level and joining the team of the sword holder. Combat skills. Netherworld Breaking / Underworld Fall, Nirvana. Lord attributes. The combat effectiveness of the undead troops under the holder is increased by 30%, the required command value is reduced by 90%, and the favorability of all undead creatures towards the holder is increased by 100%. Attached leader skill. Summon from the underworld can unconditionally and randomly summon 12 legendary troops from the underworld or 400 undead knights to join the team every natural month. Attached war spell. Underworld wave consumes half of the current mana to carry out a large-scale strike. The strike range and specific damage fluctuate according to the mana consumed. Creatures trapped and killed by this spell will be converted to undead soldiers or undead creatures on the spot and join the team. Closing parenthesis : Divine Attribute 1. Consuming divine power can open the passage between the current world and the underworld, and the sword holder can walk freely in the underworld without being harmed by the laws of the underworld. Divine Attribute 2. The holder of this sword is not harmed by undead spells. Divine Attribute 3. The person who pulls out this sword can awaken the corpse at will and turn it into an undead for him to drive. There is no need to occupy the command point, but the undead awakened by this sword will only be driven by the sword holder. Note: finding a suitable artifact spirit for the divine sword in the world of iron can eliminate the conflict between the alien artifact and the laws of the world of iron and restore it to the median artifact level. After reading the attributes, Wu Wei took a breath, truly stunned by the effect. When he first saw the introduction saying that this artifact had been weakened, he was a little worried, but after reading it, he couldn't say any other words except, it can only be said that it is worthy of being called an artifact. Its attributes are too terrifying. Even if it is weakened, it is not comparable to normal Lord equipment. With this divine sword in hand, Wu Wei's plan has no chance of failure. Wu Wei couldn't help but feel a little excited. He looked at the mountains of corpses under the city and slowly released the divine sword. There was a muffled thunder in the sky, and amid the turbulent wind and clouds, the originally clear and cloudless sky suddenly turned dark and dim, filled with an ominous and terrifying atmosphere, as if the sword blade was pulled out, the end would come. Wu Wei ignored him, pulled out the divine sword, raised it high and shouted loudly. Wake up! The breath from the netherworld suddenly filled the world. Affected by the power of the underworld, the 200,000 orc corpses under the city began to move slowly, and the flesh and blood on their bodies turned black and white at a speed visible to the naked eye. When they stood up completely, they had all turned into undead. They stood quietly under the city, looking up at Wu Wei holding the divine sword on the wall, silent and dead, as if they were looking at their own king. As long as Wu Wei gives an order, they will execute it immediately, even if they are shattered to pieces. Looking at this boundless tide of undead, the corners of Wu Wei's mouth suddenly raised slightly. He raised the divine sword again and shouted. Hades summoned. An illusory gray door appeared in the sky. It slowly opened under the power of the divine sword, spreading a gray hazy light. Waves of dragon roars came from it, and 12 ferocious hell dragons flew out from the gate of the underworld, flying and roaring in the air. Looking at the undead army in front of him, Wu Wei opened his arms and shouted loudly. Now, let the party begin. Due to the invasion of the orcs, the entire border was littered with corpses, which undoubtedly provided Wu Wei with sufficient conditions to expand his army. Putting on a black cloak and an evil ghost mask, Wu Wei put on a disguise and started wandering in the wilderness with more than 200,000 undead souls transformed by the divine sword Yulindel. Wherever he passed, the corpses were all awakened and transformed into undead. Although most of them were weak skeletons that could not even reach the first level, they could not handle the large number. Within a few days, Wu Wei had pulled up a sea of skeletons. While awakening the undead on the border, Wu Wei was also consciously moving towards Keishi Castle, but in a different direction from the human army. When he joins up with the undead guerrillas in the Night City, the battle with the orcs' marauding army will be about to begin. 3 days later, the kingdom's army led by Hegnev and Jonhar arrived near Quarry Castle. However, the orc army was unable to assemble in time due to the interference of the undead guerrillas. What else is there to say? The cavalry regiment went out and chased a small group of orcs and killed them indiscriminately, wiping out many of the enemy's effective forces before the fight even started. However, the orcs are so irritable that they are not willing to suffer losses. In the orc headquarters of Keishi Castle, the top leaders of the plundering army were gathering together for a noisy combat meeting. Bang! A corner of the hard stone table was slapped off. The orcs, supreme commander in the Cornflower Kingdom and the chief of the Black Hammer tribe, Yegril Black Hammer, yelled angrily, "Undead! I told you before, they will definitely something bad will happen. Great chief, what should we do? Humans have guarded the major arteries of Keishi Castle, and the troops that haven't come back probably won't be able to come back. Take the initiative, chief. If we drag on any longer, the few troops still outside will be eaten by humans. When will we orcs have to rely on defending the city to defeat the enemy? It's just 500,000 humans, and a legion of the same size as fighting. Which time have we not won a complete victory? What is there to be afraid of? That's right, we orc warriors are 1 against 3, let alone 500,000, even if it is 1.5 million, we can still fight. What about the undead? They only dare to harass. If a group fights, their small number cannot affect the situation of the battle. When they come, we will fight together." The orc commanders under them all asked for war, as if they had never taken human beings seriously. However, after being angry, Warchief Gegro Blackhammer retained his sanity. He slammed the table hard to silence everyone. "Stupid. That human army defeated our 200,000 garrison in 1 day and captured the Bourne territory without even sparing a single survivor. No matter how you think about it, its strength cannot be underestimated. You are so impulsive. You are taking advantage of it. Are you kidding me about 500,000 soldiers? The main troops of the Royal Court are in White Lion City and Barren Mountain battlefield, fighting against the coalition forces of the Kingdom Alliance and the Elves. When the war is so tense, 500,000 of the main troops are sent to reinforce the Keishi Castle, which shows that the Royal Court attaches great importance to this place. We should pay attention to this and open up the third battlefield for the alliance with the kingdom here. Now that the reinforcements have not arrived, we vanguard troops cannot sit still. If we lose the stone quarry and ruin the royal court's plan, we will be despised by our compatriots even if we die. Now is not the time to get excited. Before the main force arrives, everything needs to be stable." The generals stopped talking, and only one commander asked in a deep voice, "What about our soldiers outside? There are at least 80,000 more soldiers. Let them be chased by the undead and surrounded by humans. At this time, the war chief narrowed his eyes and expressed his thoughts. Of course not. When did we orcs give up on our compatriots? Then what do we do? Don't those undead keep harassing us with their speed? Then let's learn from them. Pass my order and send the Wind Wolf Cavalry Regiment out of the city to divert the attention of the human legions and cover the soldiers outside as they return to the city. You can use military formations when necessary, and be sure to ensure your own safety. Finally, tell them not to be reluctant to fight, just rescue the troops outside. When humans enter the battlefield of Keishi Castle, we will give them a thorough showdown. Now, let humans see our Wind Wolf first. The sight came to the wilderness nearly 100 miles away from Keishi Castle. A human cavalry regiment numbering 100,000 was chasing an orc force of about 30,000 returning to the city. This orc force was discovered in Account territory. When discovered, they were still escorting a large amount of looted materials to the direction of Quarry Castle. After encountering the human cavalry regiment, they fought a battle without fear of death. However, they found that the human side was too strong and unable to defeat them, so they abandoned their food and supplies and concentrated on retreating. After being chased and beaten all the way by the human cavalry regiment, the original 40,000 people had been killed to only 30,000 people. If this continued, they would probably all be annihilated before they could reach Keishi Castle. The general of this orc army also realized this and gritted his teeth and said, "No, we can't run anymore. If this continues, these humans will be able to annihilate us all on the way to escape without much loss. But the opponent has thousands of knights who know how to use fighting spirit. We are no match. That's better than being killed pointlessly. Turn around. Fight with them. The orcs who died heroically will eventually return to the embrace of their ancestors. Kill. Fight them." However, just as they were preparing to fight to the death with all their might, a storm came from afar and approached the battlefield here. Upon closer inspection, they turned out to be tens of thousands of orc cavalry riding the 4th-level magical beast Wind Wolf. Their auras combined with each other, forming a huge wolf flag above their heads. The flag danced as the wind roared, which was not only astonishing in power, but also accelerated their speed. It was still on the horizon when I first discovered it, but it rushed nearby within a short while. The leader of this human cavalry regiment was a local knight hero. After many battles, his expression changed immediately when he saw the wolf flag. It's the Wind Wolf Cavalry from King Stormrage. The opponent has a military formation and is invincible. The entire army must assemble to resist the enemy's charge. The Wind Wolf Cavalry is the lowest level among the 3 exclusive arms of the Stormrage Court, but it is also the most popular. Ordinary Wolf Cavalry uses medium-sized beast wargs as mounts, and its target is the human light cavalry, which is also a 4th-level unit. The Wind Wolf Cavalry is different. Their mounts are the 4th-level gregarious warcraft Wind Wolf. The orc riders are also rigorously trained elite warriors. Their overall strength has reached the level of the 5th-level lower class. They are a low-end version of the Warcraft Knight. According to legend, the first orc king of King Stormrage accidentally conquered a group of wind wolves when he was just the leader of the orc tribe. He was keen and soon discovered that they were better light cavalry than wargs. Mounts, and have strong reproductive capabilities, can survive and reproduce in most harsh environments. So he vigorously promoted the breeding of this kind of wind wolf, and spent hundreds of years on research and training, and finally created his first exclusive unit, which laid a decisive foundation for the rise of the Stormrage tribe to the Orc royal court. Nowadays, the Wind Wolf Cavalry Regiment has been widely popularized in the King of Stormrage. A Wind Wolf Cavalry Regiment of more than 50,000 people can use the exclusive military formation, and the number of Wind Wolf Cavalry in the King of Stormrage is conservatively estimated to be in the millions. Above, this is a total of 20 legions that can use exclusive military formations. On the 2 main battlefields against the Stormrage court, the Kingdom Alliance and the Elves suffered greatly from these exclusive legions that came and went like the wind. As soon as the iconic Stormrage battle flag was raised, wherever it passed, the enemy troops were intimidated and did not dare to confront it head-on. This human cavalry regiment under Wu Wei did not expect to encounter a famous orc ace here. But after a brief surprise, they were not too panicked. Because although the strength of the military formation has obvious advantages, the human side still has the upper hand in terms of scale. Moreover, the Wind Wolf Cavalry Regiment's military formation is speed-oriented, and its ability to attack difficult targets is not its strong point. They are not vegetarians. With a combination of 100,000 light cavalry and a full 5,000 human 7th-level knights, what if they are in military formation? The fighting spirit of 5,000 knights can consume all the strength of the opponent's military formation just from the hard cost. These are 5,000 extraordinary soldiers. They are not cannon fodder. I saw 5,000 knights igniting their fighting spirit together, and facing the Wind Wolf Cavalry, they all slashed with fighting spirit. 100,000 light cavalry also unleashed a wave of arrows. The commander of the Wind Wolf Cavalry was immediately startled. No. There are actually so many knights. Storm Wolf Banner and Storm Barrier. He quickly mobilized the power of the military formation and used the only defensive technique in the military formation. The wolf flag waved violently, rolling up the storm barrier and blocking the group of fighting spirit attacks and arrow rain. The rain of arrows was blown away, but the fighting spirit slash was not completely blocked. Part of it passed through the barrier of wind and landed on the basic defense of the military formation, causing it to flicker. However, it was still resisted by the military formation in the end, which only said that it consumed a lot of the power of the military formation. The commander of the Wind Wolf Cavalry Regiment's face became very ugly, and he said unwillingly, "There are actually 5,000 knights among the 100,000 cavalry. When did the Kingdom Alliance's army configuration become so luxurious? This human army is weird and cannot fight for a long time." Thinking of this, he quickly ordered the 30,000 orcs who had been rescued, "Quickly retreat to the direction of Keishi Castle, and leave this place to us. Right now, hurry up." The rescued orcs had not been excited for a while. Seeing that this group of humans could actually compete with their ace troops, they immediately did not dare to neglect any more and hurriedly took the time to escape. "Want to run away? Have you asked us?" Rain of arrows. The leader of the knights was not happy when he saw that the military exploits he had obtained were about to fly away. With an order, the second wave of arrows rained down on the remaining 30,000 orcs. The wolf flag above the head of the Wind Wolf Cavalry Regiment rolled up again, creating a tornado that blew away the arrow rain for them. "Your opponent is us. The Wind Wolf Cavalry Regiment is here. Don't even think about hurting my kindred." The orc cavalry commander roared angrily and controlled the military formation again. With a wave of the wolf flag, endless gusts of wind and cyan wind blades were rolled out, attacking the human cavalry regiment that was trying to attack again. The human race's light cavalry could not block the attack of the military formation. The knights could only burst out their fighting spirit again, forming a fighting spirit barrier and blocking all the wind blades. Even so, the scattered strong wind also greatly affected the cavalry behind them, making them unable to shoot with their bows. The Wind Wolf Cavalry was blocking the way. For the safety of the cavalry behind them, the knights had no choice but to give up chasing the deserters and concentrate on fighting the powerful enemy in front of them. This contest lasted half an hour. Both sides win or lose each other. Seeing that 30,000 orcs had disappeared into the distance, and most of the energy of the military formation had been consumed, the commander of the orc cavalry regiment felt that it was almost done, so he fought hard with the human cavalry regiment, and then turned around and retreated with the help of the cover of the military formation. The human knights subconsciously wanted to pursue, but were stopped by the commander. "Stop chasing. Speed is their advantage. We can't catch up." Quote. "And even if we catch up with Wang Lihao, it's useless. The opponent's military formation is running out of strength, and we don't have much fighting spirit left. Ordinary armies will still suffer too much when competing against military formations." The knight commander was a little emotional. If the opponent does not have a military formation, even if the number is doubled, he is confident that 5,000 extraordinary knights can kill the enemy and defeat them. After all, the superiority of extraordinary arms over low and mid-level arms is overwhelming. But once the military formation was established, Hikigiri completely changed. This is an advantage brought about by war technology, which cannot be measured by simple scale and quality. It also makes the war in the world of Ain more complicated, rather than simply relying on quantity and level crushing. Let's go back and report back to the two generals. The real war is about to begin. Just when the Kingdom Cavalry Regiment gave up the pursuit, they did not know that this orc army, including the 50,000 Wind Wolf Cavalry Regiment, had not actually returned to Keishi Castle. Because even though the orcs knew about it, an unexpected force intercepted them. But the Wind Wolf Cavalry Regiment was running as fast as the strong wind in the wilderness, and was about to catch up with the remnants of the orcs who had retreated earlier. When they were preparing to protect them and safely retreat to the quarry castle, the scene they saw in front of them made their pupils shrink sharply, and then they became extremely angry. They saw a silent army of undead blocking their way. The knight riding the undead dragon gathered together with a group of undead dragons such as ghost dragons, leading hundreds of undead flying dragon knights to occupy the sky and block out the sun. Thousands of dark knights and undead knights lined up silently in front of them, surrounded and silent. The vampires, dressed in bright red and with pale faces, spread their bat wings, suspended in midair, and looked at them with a ferocious smile, as if they were looking at a group of blood-eaters. The skinny ghost warlock wearing a cloak holds a skull staff, surrounded by countless ghosts, which is terrifying and gloomy, making people feel like falling into hell. Corpse witches with pale green bodies lined up in a square formation with stiff bodies, and the ominous green mist emitting from their bodies united and spread to all sides. The silent undead swordsman holds a black blade and is full of murderous aura. The number of these undead units above level 5 is astonishing and countless. However, compared with the skeleton cavalry that almost fill the entire field of vision, they pale into insignificance. What makes the orc cavalry angry is that the previous 30,000 orc remnants have fallen into the siege of this undead army. Their fresh lives are being harvested wantonly by this group of undead, and the whole army is about to be annihilated. Seeing their appearance, above the head of a dark dragon on the ground, a mysterious man wearing a black robe and an evil ghost mask pulled out the exquisite and ancient dark gold sword at his waist, and pointed it at the person in a demonstrative manner. CECD. The surrounding orcs swung their swords. The dark divine light fell from the sky in an instant, hitting their center, and then spread to all sides, causing fluctuations to sweep across the entire place. The movements of the remnants of the orcs suddenly stopped, as if their souls were taken away in an instant. After stagnating for a moment, they fell to the ground one after another, and no one was spared. The most terrifying thing is that they stood up again after a while, and in the blink of an eye they became undead, silently joining the army of the undead. Killing comrades of the same race in front of others, desecrating their bodies and souls, and turning them into undead to control them at will. This is the most unbearable and unforgivable provocation in the world. The leader of the Wind Wolf Cavalry took a deep breath. He knew that he and others had crashed into the enemy's territory and there was no possibility of escaping, so he put away the sad expression on his face. Just remain extremely angry. Just listen to him roaring at the top of his lungs. All the Wind Wolf Cavalry listen to the order and follow me to fight to the death with the enemy in front of me. The military formation rises and the Wolf Cavalry appears. When the military formation rises, the wolf appears. All the orcs looked up to the sky and roared, squeezing out all their strength, and under the leadership of the commander, they once again used the power of the military formation. The Stormrage Wolf Cavalry once again hung in the air above their heads, and the violent wind stirred up carried a thunderous roar, which seemed to indicate how angry this orc cavalry was. Seeing this, the mysterious man in black robe on Minglong's head suddenly raised his sword high and issued a silent command. The hell dragon under the seat spread its wings and took off into the sky, leading him to dive at a low altitude. All the knights came out and quickly gathered together. Whether it is the 8th level Dark Knight and the 7th level Undead Knight riding various undead monsters, even the 12 Ghost Dragon Knights in the sky led hundreds of 9th level Death Knights to line up in the air, following the black robes. The mysterious commander launched a charge together. The ocean-like skeleton cavalry also followed their pace, gradually forming a charging sea of bones. They didn't howl, and there was only the roar of countless white bones and iron hooves running on the ground. The power of the gray military formation appeared silently, covering and uniting the sea of cavalry made of bones, forming a super-large military formation. The power of the undead gathered together, turning into dark and heavy sea water above and around the head, rolling with terrifying huge waves. 10 sides followed the undead cavalry to circle the world together. Undead Cavalry Combination Army Formation Death Sea Underworld Cavalry. Kill. The Wind Wolf cavalry were not impressed by the majestic charging scene of the enemy in front of them, but fearlessly faced them and launched a counter-charge resolutely. All the power of the military formation was released, and the terrifying storm twisted and deformed, turning into a ferocious storm wolf, slamming into the sweeping sea of death. This is the collision of storm and ocean. Boom! At the moment of collision, a violent roar shook the world. The confrontation between the two military formations was actually evenly matched. However, the sea water is flowing, and the sea of death quickly surrounded the storm wolf, rolling up endless huge waves and constantly washing it, and soon impacted it to a precarious position. After all, they had consumed too much before and were completely crushed by the undead cavalry in terms of scale. It was a miracle that they were evenly matched in the first impact. Facing the huge gap in strength, everything will be annihilated. As the last huge wave hit the sky, the brilliance of the Storm Wolf banner military formation was completely extinguished. Without the protection of the military formation, the 50,000 Storm Wolf cavalry were submerged in the Dead Sea in the blink of an eye, without making any more waves. The Ace Legion that the Orc plundering army had placed high hopes on was destroyed here. The battle ended, the military formation was lifted, and the dark and condensing sea water slowly dissipated. The undead cavalry slowly retreated, revealing the corpses of orcs on the ground. Wu Wei came to them, held up the divine sword Yulindar, and activated its divine power. Under the sudden change of wind and clouds, lightning and thunder, all the corpses present turned into mummy undead. They stood up again and slowly joined the ranks of the undead cavalry, becoming the strength in Wu Wei's hands. With the addition of tens of thousands of undead, Wu Wei's undead army expanded again. There are more than 400,000 elites here alone, not to mention the low-level undead troops he left elsewhere, which add up to close to 1 million. This is the result of Wu Wei using the power of the Sword of Hades and working hard across the border to convert the undead for several days. Coupled with the completion of the rendezvous with the undead guerrillas in the City of Dark Night, the undead army he now controls has become a large-scale group. The specific composition is as follows. Legendary units. 12 Nether Dragon Knights, 15 Hell Dragons, 10 Frost Bone Dragons, 10 Corpse Witch Dragons, and 22 Ghost Dragons. Level 9 Troops, 500 Death Knights. 8th Level Troops, 1000 Dark Knights. 7th Level Arms, 3000 Death Knights. 6th Level Troops, 1000 Vampires, 2000 Ghost Warlocks, and 25,000 Corpse Witches. Level 5 Troops, 3,000 Soul-Catching Ghosts, 40,000 Undead Swordsmen. Tier 4 Arms, 80,000 Skeleton Cavalry. Tier 3 Troops, 100,000 Skeleton Shooters. 2nd Level Troops, 150,000 Zombies. 1st Level Troops, 200,000 Skeleton Soldiers. Basic Unit, 450,000 Skeleton Scavengers. The total number is more than 950,000. Although half of them are skeleton scavengers who are too weak to be used as cannon fodder, there are still more than half of the regular arms and the number of high-level arms is not small. At this scale, it would be no problem to directly attack the quarry castle. But there is no need, the kingdom's army must be present, this is part of Wu Wei's plan. While thinking, Wu Wei took out the founding scripture, contacted Hegnev and John Hal, and asked them to attack Quarry Castle immediately. After giving the order remotely, Wu Wei led the undead army to attack Keishi Castle from another direction. The two sacred generals who received Wu Wei's order did not dare to neglect, mobilized the entire army, marched hundreds of miles, and immediately launched an siege against Keishi Fort. Coming up is the military formation, with the archers raining arrows down on the formation, and the mage troops raining fireballs to suppress the city wall. If he hadn't brought the holy mage Kolatov with him when he came out this time, he would have had to cast a forbidden spell to show his respect. There was no spare force from the beginning, and the fierceness of the offensive shocked the orc generals in the city, as if they had received a blow in the head. This human army is actually composed of all middle-level and above troops. There are actually thousands of knights among them. Are all the extraordinary arms of the entire country brought together? How can they fight like this? No wonder we were able to capture the Bowen territory in one day. The Wind Wolf Cavalry Regiment has not returned yet, so it seems the situation is in danger. The offensive is too fierce. We are not good at attacking cities, and the city gate will be breached soon. Open the city gate. Let the soldiers rush out and fight with them. Under the violent and sharp offensive, the orc generals could no longer sit still, and even the grumpy ones kept clamoring to lead their troops out of the city and die with the enemy. However, it was the commander-in-chief with the worst temper, Chief Gegro, who was the calmest. He shouted in a deep voice, "Quiet. Everyone please stick to the city wall. No matter how bad the situation is, you are not allowed to leave the city. I just received news that the 500,000 main elite troops supported by the royal court will arrive at Keishi Castle in 3 days. We will hold on until they arrive even if we hold on. As soon as they arrive, victory will be ours." His words immediately made all the generals feel at ease and obey orders obediently. Only then did Zhe Galuo give the order, "Let all the troops of level 7 and above go to the city wall, send the dragon knights and beamen out, and stabilize the battle situation at any cost." 0. Yes. ... The orc defenders then began to fight back bravely. With the support of the priests, the berserker phalanx rushed out of the city, attacked the siege troops and launched berserk transformation. Although it was a suicidal tactic, it was indeed effective and attracted many night watchman formations and archers. Firepower. The totem warriors took the opportunity to rush to the top of the city and fought with the human knights who had already attacked the city wall. Although they were not as numerous as they were, they made up for the disadvantage with their bravery. 10 behemoth beasts all jumped out of the city gate, violently attacking the night watchman's formation with thunderous steps. 12 green dragon knights also roared into the sky, leading a group of 9th-level dragon fang knights to launch a deadly air attack. Cooperating with the beeman team, they interfered with the night watch formation from the air and attacked the phalanx of mages and archers. Both sides used all their strength and fought fiercely for a while, making the scene extremely grand and heroic. Just when the two sides were fighting inextricably, the army of nearly 1 million undead led by Wu Wei finally arrived at Keishi Castle from the other side. "Great Chief, it's bad. An army of undead has attacked us from the west. The number is very large, probably close to 1 million. Now we are attacked on both sides. Most of the defenders on the 4 walls have been transferred to the east, and they are completely unable to defend against the undead's attack." The sudden news made the orc leader Zhe Galuo stand up abruptly, his eyes widened with disbelief on his face. He grabbed his subordinate by the neck and asked angrily, "Where did the millions of undead come from? Weren't there only 20 or 30,000 before?" "Subordinate, I don't know what's going on." He was so angry that he pushed away his subordinates and took the personal guards beside him to the west city wall. When he saw the endless dense undead, he suddenly despaired. It's over. It was only now that he belatedly realized that these undead were not the wild undead soldiers formed in small numbers and formed a small number of death rattle rogues, but were secretly controlled by someone. Is it the Calamity Council? Have these notorious guys also reached out to this land? Zhe Galuo made some guesses and thought he had guessed the truth. But it makes no sense to say this at this time. Now the only battle is a fight to the death. Pass my order, all reserve troops and commanders will go into battle. Since there is no retreat, let us fight until the last moment. Under the double attack of humans and undead, the orc plundering army in Quarry Castle finally failed to wait for their main force to arrive. With the war on both sides, there was a serious shortage of troops, and the city gates were successively breached. The human army entered the city and started a massacre, while the undead army blocked the outside of the city and did not enter the city. They just killed all the orcs who left the city. After a day and night of fighting, all the orcs in the city were wiped out. Interestingly, the human warriors fought all the way from the east city gate to the west city gate, killing all the orc soldiers, but were shocked to see the slowly receding tide of undead outside the city gate. This made the whole army feel nervous again. After all, the undead are the public enemies of the mainland, and there are countless evil legends about them. It can be said that they are synonymous with death and disaster. Seeing such an army of the undead on the border of the motherland, who cannot be worried or afraid? Fortunately, this undead army quickly left the border and hid in the wilderness with no sign of turning back. This made all the soldiers of the kingdom heave a sigh of relief. The kingdom's army arranged to clean the battlefield and move into Keishi Castle. Hegnev ordered that all the orc corpses be transported outside the city and buried on the spot. Some soldiers of the kingdom were worried that these corpses would be used by the undead, so they reminded them that it was best to cremate them. But he didn't know that Hegnev had already received Wu Wei's order. These corpses were originally intended to be converted into undead, so naturally they couldn't do this. Don't cremate them. I put these corpses there deliberately as a test to see if these undead spirits would come back. If they come back, then we have to find a way to notify the whole country and even the entire Kingdom Alliance. This is a big deal. This is of course an excuse, but the subordinates stopped giving advice after hearing this. While lamenting Cornflower's ill-fated fate, they went down to carry out the order. Only Hegnev knew that these undead souls would definitely come back to take away these corpses and announce their birth. Because this is part of my lord's plan. Wu Wei, who led the undead army into the masterless wilderness, was indeed ambitious at the moment. In his plan, after learning that a large number of undead appeared on the border of the Cornflower Kingdom, the entire Aran region would turn their attention here. By then, the Cornflower Kingdom will become the focus of all forces. Soon they will know that there is a great lord of the south who actively resists the evil undead and a great human hero who protects mankind. By then, no one would dare to take advantage of the hot potato that is the Cornflower Kingdom, and naturally no one would question his rule as the regent. When the undead natural disaster is truly brewing and poses a sufficient threat to them, countries may have to continue to support him. Only when the initiative is in Wu Wei's hands can he truly become a man of influence enough to stir up the entire Aran region. He was definitely going to receive the hundreds of thousands of orc corpses near Quarry Castle, but now he still had one thing to deal with. Just when Keishi Castle was captured by him, the prompt from the Lord system gave him a huge surprise. You have experienced and commanded several group battles with a scale of more than 100,000 people, and seized the political power of a country with force, satisfying the activation conditions for the Special Lord profession, War Knight's job transfer mission. Please check the relevant task information on the Lord Career panel and determine whether to accept the job transfer task. Please note that once the Lord profession is successfully transferred, it can only be advanced later and cannot modify the route, so please choose carefully. Wu Wei was pleasantly surprised when he finally got a job transfer mission for a Special Lord profession, which was still his favorite War Knight route. Now that he had time, of course he had to take a closer look at the mission content. When he clicked it and took a look, Wu Wei's expression suddenly felt strange. Lord Occupation, War Knight. Lord Career Route, War Knight Right Pointing Arrow War Lord Right Pointing Arrow Conqueror King. Lord's Professional Features. Increase in the number of troops you can lead, more command points gained from upgrading. And proportionally less command points required to lead troops. Increase in the number of God-given soldiers recruited. The number of God-given soldiers that can be summoned from the unit building every month increases in proportion. The combat effectiveness of the troops is increased. An additional percentage increases the comprehensive combat effectiveness of all troops. The power of war spells is increased. The exclusive Lord skills and war spells of the War Knight route are unlocked. The negative effects caused by carrying different races of troops at the same time are eliminated, and the number of territories is unlimited. Lord Career Mission. After choosing to start the mission, use force to conquer or eliminate one or more forces of at least a national level and completely complete control of the territory of that force. The minimum requirement is a principality. This is the lower limit. The more powerful the conquered force, the exclusive the better the career rewards. There is no task time limit. After watching the War Knight's job transfer mission, Wu Wei was shocked again. To unlock the job transfer mission, you already have to conquer a country. To complete the job transfer mission, you still need to conquer another country by force. It can only be said that it is a Special Lord profession, and job transfer is indeed ridiculously difficult. However, this is exactly what Wu Wei wants. The higher the difficulty, the more obvious the professional advantages will be. Even just from the few words I have seen now, I can already see how extraordinary this Lord profession is. No matter what, he decided to switch to the War Knight profession, even if he captured another country. Thinking of this, Wu Wei set his sights on the Orc King Stormrage Court. Speaking of the largest unified political power in this area, it naturally belongs to the Orc country, and it is originally Wu Wei's next target. Just let them become the next stepping stone under Guo Wei's feet. After choosing to accept the Lord job transfer task of War Knight, Wu Wei began to divide his troops. He himself brought an elite undead cavalry back to Quarry Castle, preparing to receive the batch of orc corpses, while the rest wreaked havoc in the wilderness, sweeping away the gathering places of wild monsters, not sparing any life. Not only will these bring experience and spiritual crystals, but the collected corpses will soon become part of the undead army. If this accumulation continues over time, the undead natural disaster will inevitably occur under Wu Wei's secret control. 2 days later, on a barren mountain 20 kilometers outside Keishi Castle, tens of thousands of human cavalry dropped the last batch of orc corpses here. Looking at the corpses scattered all over the mountains and plains, the human cavalry were not only not afraid, but felt refreshed and elated. This is the fate these savage orcs deserve, to go to hell. Let them invade us and kill so many of our compatriots. I just think they didn't die enough and miserably. Just when everyone was complaining about the same enemy, a sharp-eyed soldier stood on the hillside and suddenly saw a group of grey cavalry rushing towards us in the distance. He immediately reminded loudly, "No, those undead have really appeared." All the cavalry were suddenly shocked, and a cavalry commander quickly shouted an order, "Quick! Throw all the corpses away without burying them. Get on your horse and return to the city immediately." All the cavalry moved quickly and quickly left the barren mountains before the undead cavalry arrived. Not long after they left, the undead cavalry also climbed onto the barren mountain. Several human cavalry commanders turned around to look around, and happened to see a man in black robes riding a nightmare horse on the top of the hillside, pulling out the sword from his waist and pointing straight to the sky. In an instant, there was lightning and thunder, and dark clouds covered the sun, just like the end of the world. Soon, they saw a scene they would never forget. On the desolate hillside, countless orc corpses crawled up, as if they had returned from hell, returning to the world in an even more hideous and terrifying form. By the gods, am I crazy? Converting hundreds of thousands of corpses into undead in a matter of minutes is simply more outrageous than what was described in the epic. Could it be that the mysterious man holding the sword is a death god? The cavalry commander was frightened by this scene and screamed in disbelief. Then he immediately realized the seriousness of the problem. "Go back to the city quickly and report this matter to the 2 generals." Wu Wei stood condescendingly on the hillside, watching the cavalry quickly disappear into the distance, and the corners of his mouth under the mask suddenly showed an inexplicable arc. "Let you help me lift the curtain on this drama." Thinking like this, he turned around and looked around again. Seeing the undead orcs all over the mountains and plains, he suddenly felt heroic in his heart. At this moment, the number of undead in his hands has reached more than 1.3 million. To put it bluntly, it is easy to destroy the small countries in the 5-nation alliance. Although there is still a long way to go before his goal, it is indeed an excellent start. Just when he was secretly proud, the divine sword in his hand suddenly began to tremble slightly, conveying a certain message to him. The orcs actually have reinforcements. That's good. If you don't eat the feast delivered to your door, it will be free. Outside the wilderness on the southern border of Bluebonnet, 2 endless waves of people were colliding together and fighting endlessly. This is a silent sea of bones and an army of barbarians that shouts and shouts to kill. It's just that the scene looks a bit unfavorable to the army of undead. Although a larger number of undead surrounded the orc army, the proportion of casualties was obviously that the undead lost more and faster. The orc soldiers are so brave. Their strength is almost crushing to the thin skeletons. One heavy blow can destroy one, and one sweep can wipe out an area. On the long and narrow front, it seemed like every orc soldier was firing unparalleled weapons, killing undead skeletons wantonly. Only the rain of bone arrows and the undead corpse gas bombs thrown from behind the undead can cause many casualties. Almost no orc soldiers were killed in close combat. However, considering that these undead are just skeleton scavengers who are not even first-level soldiers, it is natural that this will be the case in the battle. Using their fragile bodies to block the enemy's footsteps and provide a comfortable output environment for the undead long-range troops behind them is the only existence value of these skeletons. Even if dozens of skeletons are used to exchange for a first-order orc soldier who is shot by a hail of arrows, it is still a sure profit. Human sea tactics and cannon fodder tactics are the best choice for the undead army. The commander of the orcs has obviously noticed this, and is actively discussing adjustments to tactics at this moment. There are too many skeletons and cannon fodder in front of us. We won't be able to touch the opponent's main force for a while. If this continues, the casualties will be too great. The bone arrows are okay, and they are not as powerful as human arrows. They will cause some minor injuries at most when shot on the body. However, Although those corpse energy bombs are not very powerful, the corpse poison they contain is very troublesome, and the priests cannot remove it. The soldiers are now relying on their strong physical fitness to resist these undead toxins, and there have been many casualties already. We must change our tactics. These undead don't seem to be the same as the undead guerrilla troops that Jaeguluo mentioned, but there should be some connection between the two. There is no news about Jaeguluo suddenly. I guess something happened. I don't have time to waste time with these skeletons here. Let's fight quickly. Let Team Beeman start charging into the formation. These skeletons can't stop the King of Land Warfare. Let the Green Dragon Knights team lead the Dragon Teeth Knights to launch an air attack on the corpse witch phalanx behind the undead, and be sure to prevent them from taking action again. Although we orcs don't like to use poison, green dragons and venom-flying dragons are both highly poisonous creatures. Representatives of the Communist Party of China, these corpse poisons cannot harm them. When the enemy's rear is in chaos, we will use military formations to open up a road directly to the enemy's main force and launch a general attack. Now, attack. The orcs had their wishful thinking, but the actual situation was not as easy as they thought. The undead army did not send out high-level main troops. It was just because the coach was away that they adopted conservative tactics. It was not because of lack of high-level combat power. Therefore, when the orcs wanted to use high-level troops to crush the undead army's rear and break the deadlock, a larger number of high-level undead also began to take action. The roar of dragons from the rear of the orcs shook the sky. 10 green dragons lifted their orc partners into the sky, followed by a group of ugly venom-flying dragons. They launched an air attack from the air, hoping to cross the sea of cannon fodder and skeletons and attack the corpse phalanx. The bone arrows of the skeleton archers cannot stop their approach, because the arrows cannot break through the defense of the dragon scales, and no matter how many there are, they cannot cause any damage. The zombie chi bombs of the corpse witches are not much better. The green dragon and venom-flying dragon with full poison and magic resistance are not affected by corpse poison, and the impact of the explosion is not painful. From this point of view, the high-level troops of the orcs are the basic caster troops that can completely defeat the undead. Unfortunately, this undead army is not just a basic caster unit. The ghost warlocks hiding in the dark took action together, summoning bone spears with ghosts attached to them, tracking the dragon tooth knights in the air and shooting out, only staring at them to attack. The vampires also transformed into human-shaped bats, swimming flexibly in the air, constantly releasing blood magic to interfere with the Dragon Fang Knight, but they ignored the powerful Green Dragon Knight and did not even want to get close. Because there will be equally powerful people to deal with them. 12 Nether Dragon Knights took a group of Hell Dragons, Frostbone Dragons, Corpse Witch Dragons and Ghost Dragons directly into the sky, surrounded 10 Green Dragon Knights, and started fighting crazily. There are 69 legendary soldiers on the side of the undead army, which directly crushes these 10 green dragons in number. Even if their individual strength is stronger, they cannot withstand the siege of the same realm. Each Nether Dragon Knight brought several undead dragon helpers and faced off against a green dragon knight. The Nether Dragon Knight's Nether Dragon Fighting Chi, the Ghost Dragon's Soul-Spreading Dragon Claw, the Frostbone Dragon's Death Frost Breath, the Hell Nether Dragon's Nether Death Air Bomb, and the Corpse Witch Dragon's Plague Dragon Breath greet each other in a series. No matter how powerful the Green Dragon Knight is, there was no time to parry, and there was too much to deal with. It is said that 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. They were quickly chased and scurrying away. They were seriously injured and there was a risk of falling on the spot at any time. Dragon Knights are a precious unit. Even if the Stormrage Court is so powerful, they can only get a dozen trial quotas from the Green Dragon clan every year, and can only increase the number of Dragon Knights by single digits every year. The only giant dragon's nest produces more than a few green dragons every year. In this case, no one dares to let them miss it at will. The orcs quickly sent out all 20 remaining Green Dragon Knights for support, and then rescued these 10 precious Dragon Knights. The Beeman team just started to charge, but they also encountered a large number of counterattacks from Undead Knights, Dark Knights and even Death Knights. Relying on numerical superiority, they stopped the world-recognized King of Land Warfare. The battle plan was blocked, and the orcs were angry and surprised at the strength of these undead. Seeing the situation becoming more and more corrupt in the stalemate, the orc generals finally couldn't bear it anymore. There is no other way, use the military formation in advance. Let the Wind Wolf Cavalry, Savage Dragon Knights, and Mammoth Knights start preparing and form an army formation. I don't believe it's impossible to defeat a group of undead when all three armies are deployed together. The brilliance of the military formation bloomed one after another in the center of the Orc army. In addition to the Wind Wolf Cavalry Regiment that Wu Wei had already seen, there was also a military formation composed of thousands of Beastman tribes 8th level barbarian knights. Their mounts were all 8th level dragon beasts and earth beasts. In addition, there is a group of combined corps built around 500 giant mammoths, supplemented by orc spear throwers, wolf cavalry, ancestor sacrifices, and totem warriors, with a scale of just tens of thousands, but they can also use the power of the military formation. As soon as the three ace legions came out, the orc soldiers suddenly cheered and shouted. These are the three ace military formations that King Stormrage is famous for. They have been powerful in the Aran region for hundreds of years and have made great achievements in battle. The three ace legions came out together and released military formations at the same time. This was a formation that would only be used against the elite coalition forces of humans and elves on the main battlefield. It was already a waste to use it on this group of undead. Under this kind of offensive, there is no suspense about victory or defeat. They only need to follow the military formation and kill them. However, after seeing such a luxurious lineup of orcs, the undead immediately reacted. The sea of skeleton cannon fodder advanced instead of retreating, launching a suicidal attack. However, the undead army behind them neatly changed direction and began to retreat quickly while attacking. Yes, they started running. And it's not running around, but retreating in layers. The skeleton scavengers and cannon fodder are blocking the way to buy time, and then there are the slowest second-level zombie troops. Although they are also retreating, if the sea of cannon fodder and bones is broken through, they will become a new line of defense. They are thick-skinned and loaded with corpse poison, and they number 150,000 in size. It is not as easy for the orcs to break through their obstruction as before. The next line of defense is the first-level phalanx of 200,000 skeleton soldiers, also spread out neatly, relying on the human sea tactic to block the enemy's pursuit. Behind them is the phalanx of third-level skeleton shooters and sixth-level spellcasters. They attack while running. Before the orcs can break through the three broken back lines of defense, they will be hit by their kite-like long-range attacks. There are also tens of thousands of fifth-level undead swordsmen protecting their safety. Even if they are caught up, it will not become a one-sided massacre. Finally, due to their fastest speed, the torrent of knights and the sea of cavalry bones gradually stood out as the large troops retreated. They seemed to have abandoned the large army and just ran away, getting further and further away from the large army behind them, like a group of desperate wild horses. The orc generals were amazed and laughed. Ha ha ha, I thought these undead knew how to retreat strategically. They were all in shape up front, but when they got to the cavalry, they completely ignored the collective. In the end, they are just undead. Even if there are so many high-level knights and cavalry regiments, they still don't know how to use them. HMPH. With their speed, where can they go even if they run? Let the Wind Wolf Cavalry Regiment chase them, and the other two military formations will open the way for them and help them open all the obstacles in front of them. In response to the undead's retreat method, the orc commander immediately made new arrangements. The Savage Dragon military formation and the Mammoth military formation began to take action, mobilizing the power of the military formations to carry out large-scale strikes while charging to clear the way. The Wind Wolf Cavalry Regiment followed behind them and did not take any action to consume the power of the military formation. When the two military formations in front successively opened the four broken Cs of skeleton cannon fodder, zombie C, skeleton soldier C and long-range arms group. After the group's defense line, they suddenly exerted their strength and began to charge. The howling wind made the 50,000 wolf cavalry attack faster and faster. Like the unbridled wild wind, they rushed out of the sea of bones and corpses, raised their scimitars and charged at the fleeing undead cavalry regiment. The scene is a bit funny. There are only 50,000 wind wolf cavalry chasing a mixed cavalry regiment of hundreds of thousands. But this is the confidence brought by the military formation. Running and chasing all the way, the distance between the two sides is getting closer and closer. They were about to catch up with the undead cavalry, but the Wind Wolf cavalry whose sight was blocked did not see that there was also an elite night troop charging directly in front of the undead cavalry regiment. Behind this night force, there were more than 300,000 people who were abandoned by the undead army because they were too fast. The leader of the knights was a mysterious man in black robes wearing a ghostly mask. Yes, these are Wu Wei, who came back with more than 300,000 orc souls. When the two cavalry teams running in both directions were about to converge, Wu Wei drew out the divine sword Yulindal from his waist and raised it forward. The army of hundreds of thousands of cavalry immediately separated in an orderly manner from the middle, got out of the way, and after turning a big bend on both sides, naturally joined Wu Wei's knights. In an instant, the power of the dark military formation burst out, quickly connecting all the undead cavalry. The turbulent Dead Sea Wang Yang reappears in the world. Combined military formation Dead Sea Underworld Cavalry. Coincidentally, it was also a Wind Wolf cavalry regiment that faced this tsunami-like offensive this time. The Wind Wolf cavalry did not know that they and others were about to follow in the footsteps of their predecessors. Suddenly, the chasing lamb turned into a torrent of death rushing towards them. They were completely confused. They only had time to respond urgently and mobilize their military forces to defend with all their strength. Stormrage Wolf Banner and Storm Barrier. The moment the wall of violent wind was formed, it was directly bombarded by the terrifying wave and then engulfed. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.